Hello, and welcome to the FAFSA portion of the Colorado Department of Higher Education's Educator Financial Aid Training. I'm Jennifer Lucero with the Colorado Department of Higher Education, and today I'll be taking you through some FAFSA updates, as well as a FAFSA walkthrough, and we'll discuss manual entry process. But first, there have been many updates since the 26-27 FAFSA has been released. There is now instant verification on the FAFSA form, so you no longer have to wait the 1 to 3 days to be verified. It happens automatically. The onboarding videos have been removed, so students and contributors can now flow through the form freely. There is also a FAFSA application progress bar at the top of the page so you can see the progress. The contributor invitation page has been modified. Students are not entering as much information for contributors, and contributors are sent a code which makes it very easy for them to access their students' FAFSA. When the parent is filling out their portion of the FAFSA, the state of residence will auto-populate with whichever state is in their address. Also, when the contributor or the student answers the "Did you file with your current spouse?" question, it will auto-populate to yes. That will be the default. If you answer no, you will be pushed in a different direction. There is also a highlight flag or a banner in the FAFSA submission summary that informs students of errors that need to be corrected. There's improved search and selection functions. So for instance, when students are looking for colleges, they can now filter by name and they do not have to put in the state. Same with high school search. It is more intuitive now. And there's also an option to enter a foreign high school if needed. There have been improvements made for I-10 users. They may now edit their alien registration number or their I-10 in the FAFSA. If they do not have a social security number, they can leave that field blank and it will auto-populate with zeros. They do not need to enter the zeros. And then also there's a new exclusion. So if families own a business with 100 or fewer full-time employees, if they own a family farm or a commercial fishing business, those are not included in the asset calculation. There is now a lower earnings indicator on the student's dashboard, and this will tell them if one of the schools they chose, if their graduates are earning less than they should be. Coming in this July 1st, 2026, there will be some changes coming. Workforce Pell will be implemented, and there are some new ineligibility for Pell Grant. Students with an SAI of greater than 14,790 will not be eligible for Pell Grant, nor will students receiving non-federal scholarships or grants that cover their entire cost of attendance. I do want to say this does not include emergency grants. So if there is a homelessness issue or foster ed issue, they will still be able to use those grants. There have been some loans that are eliminated. The Grad Plus loan is eliminated, and there are new graduate and professional limits that you can see there. This also includes the Parent Plus loan caps. However, they did write in a legacy provision. So if a student or a parent borrowed a federal loan before July 1st, 2026, they may continue borrowing under the old limits. And believe it or not, coming up for the 27-28, there are already some changes in place, the ease of renewal. So students' data will pre-populate from previous FAFSAs, so they don't need to take all that time to enter that information again. Also, there is clearer language on the FAFSA form. Hopefully, it clears up some confusion. So specifically, like with the high school question and the bachelor's question, those have been worded differently. Parents with multiple students can now reuse their information and they do not have to re-enter it for every student, which is fantastic. And also, they are already taking comments for the 27-28 FAFSA. They will only take those comments through regulations.gov, and you need to submit those comments by April 14th. We will now go through the walkthrough. I'm going to stop sharing for a second and reshare so we can go to the prototype. Whoop, that is not the prototype. And first, I will start off as the student. And for these examples, let it be known that both the student and the contributor have already created their FSA IDs. Just want to be sure that you are seeing this, the prototype. Okay, there we go. Logging in as the student who is going to start the 26-27 FAFSA form. Student or parent can start the FAFSA form. However, it is easier for the student to start the FAFSA form and invite the parent because then they receive the code to enter to find that FAFSA form easier. If the parent starts the FAFSA form and invites the student, it does revert back to the matching, which is a little more complicated. So always have the student start and invite the parent. So I am the student continuing through. As you see, no onboarding videos, go straight to student identity information. It is imperative that the student checks each field for accuracy. Once they are sure everything is correct, they can click continue and it takes them to their state of residence, which is either the date they were born or the date they moved there. And they click continue. This is for consent to have their federal tax information brought over electronically from the IRS. This is a student, so if they don't have any information, that in itself is the information. So we will go ahead and approve for that to happen. This is the automatic matching. As you can see, it's going through. It has successfully matched me. So I will click continue. And now the student is going to go and answer their personal circumstances. Probably single, never married. This is the first year for the student. So when the student begins the 26-27 school year, what will their college grade level be? Freshman. When the student begins the 26-27 school year, will they already have their first bachelor's degree? That is one of the questions that has been reworded. No, we do not have a bachelor's degree. And then it takes you to the student's personal circumstances. It's really important that students read through each of these circumstances to see if any of them qualify. If even one matches, they could potentially get that independent status to continue without a contributor. For us, it's going to be none of these apply and continue. You've got the homelessness question and unusual circumstances. Again, very important the student reads through these and make sure that none of them apply because this could give them the provisional independent status to continue without a contributor. We're going to say no to these and continue. As you can see, I'm a dependent student. That does mean I will need a contributor on my FAFSA form. The direct and subsidized loan question, that does default to no. Most students should keep it as no. If they change it to yes, they will only be considered for unsubsidized loan and no Pell Grant or any other types of aid. So we want to leave that as no and continue. And now it takes us to student demographics. The gender question does need to be answered. And then it takes us to race and ethnicity. Keep in mind that these questions have no bearing on how much federal aid the student will be eligible for. If they prefer not to answer, they may choose that option. The student citizenship status gives us three choices: U.S. citizen or national. If they choose eligible non-citizen, they will need to put their A number in there. That's the alien registration number. Or they can choose neither U.S. citizen nor eligible non-citizen. That will give them access to continue through the FAFSA form. We'll choose U.S. citizen or national and continue. And it takes us to the parent education status. If the student doesn't know, they have that option. Parent killed in the line of duty. And now the student high school completion status. So what will the student's high school completion status be at the beginning of the 26-27 school year? For our student, they will have earned a high school diploma. Now we're entering high school information. This is not exactly what it looks like now. As I mentioned earlier, there has been an update to this page. If a student needed to enter a foreign high school, there would be an option here for them to do so. For us, I don't have a lot of options because this is the prototype, so I will just choose that school. They do verify that it's the correct school and continue. Students will need to fill out finance section. And most of these, for most of the students, will probably be zeros. And you can go ahead and put that in. No IRA rollover, no pension. If they're a freshman, there's probably no grants or scholarships to claim. And I'm going to put 0 for foreign earned income. Remember, this is for the student. They continue. And now it takes us to student assets. They will need to put in that. This is sort of cash on hand. So whatever they have in their savings account or a checking account, what's in their pocket, maybe not very much. But the current net worth of investments, they may not have any investment. If there is a 529 plan in the student's name, that amount would go there. We'll put 0. And for businesses and investments, we will put 0. But remember, family businesses with fewer than 100 employees, farms where the family resides, or commercial fishing businesses would not be included here. Now the student will select their colleges and career schools. And this also is still looking the same. It looks a little bit different now for students to choose. They don't have to put in all of that information. They can actually just put in the name and then it's a drop down. Students can still choose up to 20 schools, however. They'll choose their colleges, verify their choices, and then click continue. Now they will invite a parent as a contributor. If they are not sure who the contributor will be, they do have this tool here, who counts as a contributor. And what they'll do is they'll put in, do they have one parent or do they have 2? You can see here, they can check the student has only one legal parent, they can check there. If they still do have 2 parents or they have both parents, they will put in both parents there and then click continue. It then asks them, are parent 1 and parent 2 married to each other? For our purposes today, we're going to say no. Do parent 1 and parent 2 live together? We will say no. Which parent has provided more financial support for the student over the past 12 months? This is something that has changed in the last couple of years. It's no longer which parent claims the student on their income taxes. It's whichever parent has provided the most financial support in the last 12 months. If both parents have provided the same amount of support, then it's going to be whichever parent has the higher income and assets. If both parents have the same income and assets, they will decide amongst themselves who it will be. For our purposes today, parent 1 is going to be the contributor. Did parent 1 remarry? We will say yes. That means now that we have the parent 1 plus the parent's spouse. If the parent and the parent's spouse file their taxes jointly, parent one will be the contributor because when they pull in parent one tax information, parent two parent spouse information will come along with that. Now, if parent one and parent spouse do not file jointly, they will both be contributors on the FAFSA form. Both parents and parent spouse, or both parent and parent spouse, I should say, will need FSA IDs or studentaid.gov accounts to complete the FAFSA form. And parent one will invite parent spouse to complete their portion. So once they've decided who the contributor is, they click continue and they enter the parent's email address. It's important to mention that only a biological or legally adopted parent can be a contributor on the student's FAFSA form. If the student is living with grandparents, grandparents are not contributors on the FAFSA form. And that is why a student must read through those circumstances to determine if they will have a contributor and who it will be. We will send the invite to the parent and continue. This takes us to the review page. It is pretty important that the student click on the arrow and make sure that all of the fields are accurate. They can see that the invite has been sent, and this is the code the parent will enter to access the student's FAFSA. It's important here that they continue, so it will take them to the signage page. They attest to who they are, and then they sign their student section. Now we can see that it is pending submission, and so they want to check with their contributor to make sure that they received the invite. When the contributor receives the invite in their email, they will have an accept invitation link, but they will also see the code that is specific to their student's FAFSA. They can click accept invitation, log into their account. This is the parent account or the contributor account. And they'll see that code auto-populate. If the code does not auto-populate, they can get it from the invitation, or the student can log into their account and retrieve the code. Click submit, and now the parent is in their portion of the FAFSA form. It takes them right to their information. They too should make sure that everything is correct before continuing through so that they can give consent for their federal tax information to be automatically brought in. And then you see we're going through that matching again. Now, those were pretty easy scenarios because the matching, they did get matched quite easily. So now we want to see what happens if they're not matched. If a student or contributor is not verified immediately, they will get this message, sorry, data could not be retrieved. However, they can continue through and enter the information manually. So you can see here, untaxed portions of IRA distributions. They will go to the form 1040 and subtract line 4A from line 4B and then enter that answer right here. It gives them the helpful little helpful little tips on both the student and the parent. So they'll go through, enter this information manually, and then submit the form. Once the form is submitted, the student should continually log into their account to check their dashboard. They will either have their student aid index, their submission summary there, or they may see this action required. This means that there is an error on the application and that they need to click through correct those errors before the FAFSA form is actually submitted and they find out how much federal aid they're eligible for. Once they do get those corrections submitted, they need to keep checking back for the submission summary. This is an example of the submission summary. It tells them how much federal Pell Grant they may be eligible for, how many federal direct loans they may be eligible for, and if they might be eligible for federal work study. Once they see this information, students should start following up with the schools they chose, the financial aid office at the schools that they chose, asking for their award letters so they can see their cost of attendance and make an educated decision on which school they'd like to attend. But if you have any questions about the FAFSA form or financial aid, please feel free to contact us here at the Colorado Department of Higher Education. We have our FAFSA inbox, our outreach inbox, and there's many resources on the CDHE website. Thank you for joining the FAFSA portion of the CDHE Educator Financial Aid Training.